Well, it's the middle of the night and it feels like a really significant night because my one of my daughters is having a bit of a health scare at the moment and I'm just recovering from my own. And I really wanted to share it because it was a really profound experience that happened to me this week. On Monday, I woke up and I have a regular practice of fasting on Mondays. Not every Monday have I fasted the whole day, but it's been about 6 months now that it's been mostly a whole day on Monday fasting. And that practice has grown out of me having really explored water fasting in recent years and finding incredible benefit from it, and realizing that actually the more I touch base with an empty stomach, the better of a person I am. That when I'm too full, I start losing my way. And that sounds possibly like a bit of a crazy thing. And I want to reassure anybody that this health scare that I had, it looks like it's all good. But for a few days leading up to Monday, I'd noticed this pain in my ear that had been growing. And it was really uncomfortable to the point that I couldn't sleep on this side of my head. And it was only on Monday morning I'd got back from jumping in the sea, I'd got back from breathing and chanting to the sun in the morning. And yeah, I'm doing all sorts of crazy practices. I can't run on the beach anymore. I've never liked running, but I got into running on the beach just out of pure joy this year, like running along on the sand in the sunshine. It was amazing. But now my right foot is there's some condition that runners suffer from that I just cannot ever remember how to say. Something beginning with F and ending with itis. Fascia. Anyway, so some of my health routines, I've been forced into a time of rest. You know, like I was loving running and getting up and getting out first thing in the morning, getting all those amazing infrared sun rays on my skin from the earliest time of the day. And now I've been forced to just like step that back to something that I was doing before, which was basically just getting up and seeing the sun every day. And so it's kind of peculiar for me to find myself in awake in the middle of the night, and that is something that I have noticed happens when a fast is beginning to really work its magic with me. Especially if I've been getting lots of naps and feeling really rested. And this is one of those nights where I wake up in the middle of the night and it's just like I'm on. So I'm going to use this time to record a couple of videos that I had really had in mind to record, but not found the time during the day to do. So this Monday, I got back from doing all my routines outside and had a shower, and I was in the bathroom and I was just like, wow, this ear is sore. Like, I can't ignore this. Like, something's not right here. And not right here. And I noticed, like, I had because I don't really look at myself in the mirror that much, and so I had a proper look and I was like, oh my god, there was this massive lump here. Compare it to this one, it was, oh my goodness, my whole right ear was really inflamed. It looked red, it looked massive. And I know people have often said I used to get called big ears at school, but like this was a big ear. It was throbbing, it hurt, and there was this big lump right here. And I have an old friend who he's he's in his 80s, but he has had both the tops of both ears, well, pretty much most of both ears removed through having had cancerous growths. And, you know, it's really clear that cancer is this huge thing right now. And so many people being touched by this, either directly or vicariously through their family. And so, that came into my mind. I've got this close friend. He's got the ears removed from tumours. So, that was there quite quickly. But I was like, well, how do I know that it's not a boil, a spot? And so I was having a good look. Again, pretty rare for me to really look at myself. And I was like, no, there's no head. There's no head on this. It doesn't look like a boil. It feels painful, way more than I would get from a normal spot. And I haven't had a spot that I can think of for quite some time. I've been in really good health. I'm feeling so grateful to be alive. I've been living the adventure of life to its fullest in the last 6 months. I've just come out of this, what I would describe as a dark night of the soul. And, where in the space of 3 years, my older brother died, my dad died, my a business died, my partner and I lost loads of money, and then that finally resulted in the breakdown of our marriage, and now I don't live with my children, and it was quite a thing. And yet there was this kind of rebirth earlier this year where I fasted for a total of 23 days during Lent, and water fasting, and then that just led to this kind of rebirth that has, and I really applied myself to a process of healing, and that seems to have regenerated my life, and so many things are going so well. I now find myself living in a lovely flat. I've got my own wheels for the first time in my life. Work is flowing in, and things are happening. The projects that I'm embarking on are working out really well. So I'm looking at this thing going, well, it could be a spot, could be a boil, could be, but how do you know? How do you know it's not cancer? And of course, the only, I pictured myself telling people, and the first thing they're going to say is, go and see a doctor. Now, I've become very, very suspicious of any claims to knowledge made by doctors in recent years. The whole lockdown period forced me to research the approaches employed by doctors, and I researched it in depth. And what I found is that the pharmaceutical industry is really not to be trusted. And the pharmaceutical industry is making money out of all sorts of really disturbing aspects of our modern world. And they are actually the primary cause of so much of the ill health that we see in this world. So, for example, if I went to see a doctor and they said, that could be cancer, they would choose to cut into it. Now, what I've learned is that that cancer is actually this incredible way of the body healing itself. It creates a tumor which kind of cuts off a piece of malignant tissue that's not working out too well, and cuts it off from the part of the body. And there's a kind of a spiritual parallel going on there, because actually it seems that very often people who suffer from cancer are cut off from the whole of existence. They are somewhat isolated from, you might call it the divine or God or themselves or their deepest self or their highest self. And they might be really isolated in a very practical way, mentally, maybe physically cut off from people around them. And it's funny because none of those things really describe me, but it still doesn't mean that I would dismiss the possibility. I'm not arrogant enough to think that a disease can't touch me, or that, So I kind of, so if I went to a doctor, the first thing that they would want to do is to cut it, to have a biopsy. And the thing is, a biopsy, from what I understand, You're cutting into the body's natural process of trying to repair something, and it ends up spreading throughout the body. And the other things prescribed by doctors as it's drugs, petrochemical drugs, which all petrochemical drugs are that the body responds to them as toxins. They're not natural, they're synthetic, and the body immediately goes, that's not right, and then tries to, as far as it can, downplay and detoxify itself of those particular chemicals. And then so there would be drugs, there would be radiation therapies, there's the cutting into the thing which spreads it around, like rather than the body doing this genius thing of taking, wrapping this tissue, kind of isolating it and allowing it to go through some kind of healing process, it would, there's all these interventions that ultimately are hostile to the human body and not in a state of trust with its own innate wisdom and ability to heal itself. Now, one of the things that I have realized through the process of getting into fasting is that the body does have this incredible capacity for self-healing. And I've got to know people through this field who have had outrageous success with healing themselves of all sorts of conditions. And water fasting, my experience of it is just the most profound rejuvenating process. So when I was faced by, and one of the other things that I've learned about doctors and diagnoses is that one of the things that we've come to think of is when they say, have you got impetigo or conjunctivitis, or that there's these really clear distinctions between these different conditions. And it's funny because as a young boy I had asthma and eczema, and it was really interesting to me that every time I would go to a doctor, they would have a different diagnosis of what was going on with my skin. Oh, this is eczema, this is infected eczema, this is psoriasis, this is a herpes thing sometimes, this is a impetigo, this is a, there was all of these different labelings, and I've forgotten many of them, that were applied to just these simple rashes or bumps that would appear on my skin. And I've seen amazing research now and evidence of doctors arguing between each other about how to diagnose particular conditions. And what's been really fascinating is to find that, as consumers of the medical industry, we've been trained to think that when a doctor says psoriasis, that's something which is distinct from eczema, and that you could somehow prove that this is the condition that somebody has. And actually, it's just based on so much conjecture and is, doctors in the dark kind of go, and it probably depends on their training in the school that they came from as to whether they're going to go, oh, that's psoriasis or that's eczema. And my own experience of the medical industry being able to correctly diagnose and then offer some sort of treatment for years and years and years I suffered from asthma and was what I now think of as addicted to Ventolin. I took Ventolin and salbutamol and Becotide nearly every day for years and years and years and years. And when my asthma has got better? When I stopped taking them. And eczema, oh my God, I have tried so many potions and lotions and all this stuff being applied to the skin, all being applied to the symptom on the outside. And it just took decades of self-education to realize that it's not about what I put on my skin. The heat condition of my body, that was an excessive heat that was trying to make its way out through my skin, needed cooling with water, with better foods that weren't so antagonistic to my body, less sugar, less high energy, acidic things that were clearly really aggravating for my system. And so that process of, and now I don't suffer from eczema at all. Now, I know that there are people who just grow out of those conditions of eczema and asthma, and so maybe it was just a connection with age and me finally maturing out of these childlike syndromes. And it's quite possible also that they were induced by vaccines that I was taking as a young man. But for whatever reason, what I've found is that if a doctor looks at a lump in your ear and is going, is that a spot? Is that a boil? Is that cancer? Is it some other kind of fibroid or parasite? They're especially when something is in its nascent stages, they have no idea. They've got as much idea as I would. Now, the treatment that they prescribe is going to really determine how that's going to develop. And as I was sort of going through this thought process, I realized that, the last person I wanted to see about it was a doctor. And because I'm already quite a way down this road of self-healing, especially through fasting, I knew that the best thing that I could do right now was to fast. And it really didn't matter whether it was a spot or a boil or a cancer, or a tumor or whatever, however you should describe it. It was the best thing I could do was exactly what I was going to do in all of those situations, which was to stop eating so that my body could enter this process that's called autophagy. And autophagy really kicks in, I think, after about 18 hours and certainly after a day. And autophagy is this process that someone received a Nobel Prize for. I believe it was a Chinese researcher who realized that when you don't eat for 24 hours, your body goes into this process where all of the where it starts consuming bad tissues, unhealthy tissues, and replenishing them. Your body goes into this rejuvenation process. And that's why fasting has really proliferated in recent years as something that we've all heard of, whereas when I was younger, I never heard of people fasting except for protest. I remember when I was at school, there was a fast. Everybody did a day's fast in sympathy with African children around the time of Live Aid and stuff like that. And I remember at that time the thought of having a day without food seemed, it wasn't a big thing compared to what other people were dealing with. But in our culture, we are so programmed to think that we need 3 meals a day, let alone 1 meal a day. The general reaction to fasting is one of total aversion. People really don't get it, and they worry about you. Just go for 1 day without food, people get worried about you, let alone go 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, 7 days. And yet actually in our human history, going for days without food is kind of regular. Like times of being able to live in a time or place where there was a bountiful enough food supply to go to bed with a full belly every day that was the good times. So just 1 meal a day is already something to really celebrate in life. And yet we've been taught, we've been indoctrinated into thinking that breakfast wasn't even a thing about 100 years ago for anyone. So we've been indoctrinated to think we need 3 meals a day and snacks to survive, and we don't. So I knew that whatever was going to happen, the best thing I could do was to stop eating, because that would give my body the time and energy it needed to resolve this thing. And this is, so all of these thoughts are happening in the space of about 1 minute as I'm looking in the mirror going, well, what am I going to do? And then something really occurred to me as I was thinking, is this cancer? Like this light bulb went on inside me in terms of, wow, imagine if this really is. Don't just imagine it. Like for a moment, I really did properly engage with that thought. And the fact that that might mean I have weeks to live, especially if I'm not going for an intervention with a doctor. And then I kind of thought, well, I mean, if I'm not going to go for medical interventions, then this is all on me, and I need to fast right now. And I will need to fast for as long as it takes for this thing to resolve itself. And how long might that be? And there's this book that I keep meaning to write, which I call Fast or Die, in my head, because I feel like it's a really simple and amazing question that people should consider, like especially someone who's suicidal or is scared of death or is worried about illness or is super depressed, because if you're in a really, really dark place, and to the point that I have friends, I know people who have said, right, I want to die, I'm tired of life, I'm just sick of this, I'm ready to go. And usually people then soothe them and kind of say, well, and for me, my suggestion is fast or die. If you're really sick of this life, you've really had enough, then what have you got to lose from fasting? Just fast. And in fact, having been inspired by a couple of very, very smart people I really like, I've already come to terms with how I'm going to make my way out. If my life isn't taken tragically and suddenly, then I will engage with my death through fasting. If I do find myself with some horrendous diagnosis or something crazy starts happening to my body, I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to fast, and I'm going to tell all my friends and family, and I will say, this is my time. And part of the reason that I think that that's such an amazing thing, I mean, I should explain that one of the people who shared this is a chap called Satish Kumar, who's been the founder of, I think he's the founder of Emerson College, which is, I believe it's an agricultural college, but they do all sorts of things there. And his father was a Jain monk, and in the Jain tradition, that's what people do. When they come to their end time, they go, okay, this is me, I'm done, I'm on my way out. And they begin to fast, and they tell everybody they know, and people come and visit and pay their last respects and say goodbye, and then someone's able to die in peace, having seen the people that count to them, and be able to engage with their ending with dignity and go into it. And fasting, by all accounts, makes for a very peaceful way to go out. It's not some clawing nightmare that has been reported by people like Stephen Jenkinson as being almost the standard response to death in our Western culture. It seems that most people make their way out of life filled with terror and regret, and death, generally speaking, in this culture is not a pretty thing. Yeah. We only have to look at the world of care homes, the world of, and there are a lot of accounts and personal testimonies that I can make that kind of statement on. I'm not just going on what other people have said. The fear of death is really profound. And it's interesting because in the last couple of days, I spoke to a couple of people about this process that went on in the bathroom that I haven't finished yet. And like the instant reactions to people's thought that I'm considering that I may have cancer, like this, it's huge. It's huge, and it's one of the reasons why I can understand why people don't want to talk about profound diagnoses they have, because of the enormity of people's responses. They completely project their own fear of death onto you. It's really interesting. And I mentioned this week to a couple of people who are pretty smart, spiritual, well-connected people. You know, they're not generally fearful types, and it was amazing even with them to notice this. You know, that's big. And so anyway, I realized that if I'm going to do anything about this, I need to. I didn't really finish with the fast or die thing. The thing is that when you fast, two things are going to happen. You're either going to go through this miraculous rejuvenation because finally your body's got a chance to recover. You know, that's the thing, is that, you know, when we're constantly eating, especially when we're just constantly eating toxic foods, we're making the problem worse. Like, it's just getting worse and worse and worse and worse. So to then suddenly do something that gives the body this opportunity to recover, it has miraculous effects. Miraculous. You know, especially if it's done in coordination with rest. And so if you're really at the end of your tether and you think you come to the end of your life and you fast and engage with that process like consciously and say, you know what, it's my time, I'm done, I'm ready to go. You begin to say your goodbyes, chances are you're going to have this miraculous rebirth. And if you don't, you're going to die. That thing that you said that you want to do. So, you know, if people are so afraid of not eating because they think it's going to kill you, what have you got to lose? And, you know, people wrestle with, you know, like, oh, I want to commit suicide. How am I going to do it? How am I going to, what am I going to, you know, and it always has this impact on other people. It, you know, like, someone's got to find you. Someone's got to deal with your body. And also, it usually means you don't say goodbye to the people who really matter to you. And so you rob them of the opportunity to show their love and their connection. You rob them of the opportunity to say goodbye, just simply. You know, people can't necessarily save you, but often the reason for that level of depression is isolation, you know, a complete lack of community. We live in this extremely fragmented, atomized world where people are absolutely starved of love and attention. We used to live in villages where we were surrounded by people all the time. Our neighbors were right there. And now we're all separated by walls and barely know the people around us, generally speaking. And it's, you know, it's you know, the reason that people are suffering so much depression and illness is because of the way that we're living, which is so out of balance and not in harmony with our natural bodies, the planet, and the way that humans have learned to live over hundreds of thousands of years. So so fast or die. And this was and a smile began to cross my lips as I was in there in the bathroom looking at this, going, wow, like, what a gift. Like, this could be amazing. Like, not only is this now inducing me to fast, which is always a process that I get a lot out of. It's not just the physical rejuvenation, but it's the, you know, after a few days, I was thinking about it. I was going out to see the sun a couple of days ago, and I'm there for the sunrise, and it's a beautiful sunrise, but it's not like really touching me in my heart. You know how sometimes at some points in your life you go to see a sunrise and it's just, you know, really can blow you away, or just this absolutely magical sunset. And I don't know, maybe not everybody knows what that feels like, but I do. And this spring, when I was going through this fasting process and this rejuvenating thing. I remember going down, even though my life was in bits at that time, and I was mourning so much loss. I could go and walk down to the sea and see the sun coming up and just be filled with gratitude and love and appreciation, really, really feeling that sunrise. So it's been kind of odd to be going down and seeing the sunrise and just being, oh, there's the sun. And as that smile was crossing my lips this morning, there was this, or the other morning, there was this, wow, so I know that just the process of fasting is completely going to reconnect me with that level of gratitude, which is an amazing thing in itself. But then I was like, wow, well, say for instance, you have some crazy turbo cancer and you've got like a month to live. Well, what an adventure you can have at that point. Like, what have you got left to lose? On my table in my other room, there's a speeding fine letter, there's a parking fine letter, letters that I've written to respond to those accusations. And there's other administrative letters that I'm intending to send to different authorities. And in the face of my death, it was just, oh my God, like, what have I got to lose with any of those respects? Suddenly the ties and the binds of society just seemed to just fall off me. There was this real feeling of exhilaration of like, wow, if you take your death seriously, what are you going to do tomorrow? Are you really going to waste your time fussing about nothing? Like, are you going to get up and go to work in the normal way that you have been, Ian? Slightly stressed, freaking out slightly. If you do go to work, are you not going to go with a sense of joy and pleasure? Like, that's the choice I've made, is to come to work today. When you see someone, are you going to have a conversation with them just like it's for nothing? Or are you going to talk to them in a way that's like, wow, this might be the last time I'm talking to you. This might be the last time I'm seeing you. And juicing it for as much as you can, for as much human connection as it's possible, whether that's tears or joy or whatever. Am I not going to totally reevaluate everything it is that I'm doing in my life and proceed thus, to proceed accordingly? And as I was, the smile was just continuing to spread on my face. I would not be able to finish some of the projects that I've started, and I have 4 children that I would no longer be able to enjoy or to be beside, and many of my life streams I'm looking at my vision board on the other side of the room, and many of those would go unfulfilled. But so what? I am so grateful for the life that I've lived. I'm so grateful to have a body and hands and fingers and toes and eyes that are able to see and ears that can hear and a nose that can smell and a home, somewhere to be warm and dry. And, for all the things that are happening in my life, I saw my children last night and it was just so beautiful, so much fun. It was, I'm just, this phone that I'm recording with, this light that I picked up for £1 at a car boot sale, just like, my life is just full of things to be grateful for. And I've been lucky all my life. I've had even in the midst of really seemingly unlucky things, I've had the most incredible life. It's been so, so beautiful. So amazing. Even with all its struggles, even with broken hearts and yeah, even with all the things that I've suffered in the course of a lifetime, I am still so happy to have had this life. And if it was really the case that I just had 1 month to go, wow, what would I do? And partying would be involved. It's interesting because I'm preparing for this dance event that I've organised for the 29th of November, which is the day before my birthday. And I'm not advertising it as a birthday party. This is a dance event I'm organising with people, and I'm going to be playing djembes and then being able to just surrender to these amazing DJs for the next few hours. And I was just thinking, wow, imagine if that's like my last proper party, how I'm going to dance for my life. I mean, I'm going to dance for my life, whether that is my last party ever or not. But I was really affected by Prince's song in the 90s, I'm going to party like it's 1999. In fact, was that not from the 80s? And I remember as a child thinking about that song and going, wow, that, because it seems so far in the future. I wondered if I was ever even going to see 1999. And now I've got friends that weren't even born then. It's so funny. And I really did party like it was 1999. And yeah, it's like the degree with which I would embrace, a terminal diagnosis to do those things that, really matter to me. And the more I thought about it, the more I felt this like unstoppable vigor, this vitality, this desire for life. Whether it's a short amount of time that I got or not, that's what I was thinking at that time. It was just all the excuses I needed to just throw off all the chains, throw off all the resistances, throw off all the conditioning to that I have to live in a particular way, and to just absolutely go for it. Absolutely go for it. Now, this year, I've been pretty much going for it. I've been, I have been really going for it. I've really been, since basically losing everything, I've been living life in that way already. Of this, well, what have I got to lose? Why would I not? Right, okay, I want this event to happen. I'm doing it. Oh, I'm missing. I'm missing connection with men. Right, I'm organising a men's group. Oh, I need to dance. I'm going to organise a dance thing. Oh, I'm missing some kind of spiritual practice. Right, okay, I'm going to found a church. And I've been doing all of these things, and they've all been going amazingly well. Like the response. So then imagine that being amplified by really going, wow, well, this is it. This is my last month. And, it's so funny because so much of this actually then connects with our social situation. We're on the precipice of totalitarianism, full-blown totalitarianism. Most people do not engage with that idea and realize how dangerously close we are to full-blown authoritarian control through the money supply, through digital IDs. We are tantalizingly close. I don't know if tantalizing is the word for it. Perilously close to really becoming slaves to a degree that we never have ever previously imagined possible. Well, a few people have imagined it, the likes of George Orwell, and communicated it very accurately. But that Big Brother state is, I mean, it's here already, but it's nearly made manifest to a degree that only our worst nightmares could imagine. The service that chap that did Black Mirror has served to the world in terms of, really outlining what that world could look like. He's done it very profoundly. So, here at this point, I'm still just, 10, 15, 20 seconds into this smile in the bathroom. And I was contemplating, whether or not I should communicate this. Do I record a video? Because at the time, I really was not convinced that I had cancer at all. I totally knew that it could just be a spot, but that I couldn't not engage with the fact that it could be cancer. And I decided that I was going to fast because I knew that would be the body's best way of healing. And then I thought, well, yeah, who do I communicate this to? Do I tell my children? Mothers of my children? Would that be worrying them? What would that be? Do I tell my brothers and sisters? Do I tell people around me? Do I put it on the internet? I was going through all of these questions, being thrilled by... It's so crazy to think of being thrilled. I'm part of the C Club. Yeah, I've got cancer. I mean, so what I should say very clearly then is that in the last couple of days, that big throbbing lump has now started to produce a head. And it's really clear that it's going to be a spot or a boil, that my body's releasing something. And whether or not that producing the head related to me fasting, I don't know. It's just been a couple of days. Probably not. Probably was just going to happen anyway. And it's funny because I've since spoken to 2 or 3 other people that have had big spots appear in their ears just in the last couple of days, with the limited number of people I've spoken to about it. So that was quite surprising. So clearly there's a phenomenon that's going on here. It's not just me. Why are people suddenly getting massive, really painful spots in their ears? Is it anything to do with phones, I wonder? One person I knew had it in the left ear, one person in the right ear, and I was wondering if there was correlations to, but I know that the body also gives us signals to whether or not something happens. Yeah, I don't know, there's more stuff I could say about that, but anyway. Yeah, what's the right way to proceed? Especially in the face of the fact that people are going to worry. So yesterday also, I then had a treatment from someone where they gave me a glass with, now, what is it? Hydrogen chloride? What is it? I can never remember the name of this stuff, but it's incredible for healing. I know people that have helped get through cancers and such like by ingesting this and using it topically, but they made this solution. Is it hydrogen chloride? I can't remember what it is. And then putting it in a glass and me just putting the glass over my ear, and it was crazy because they said just do it for, I think it was 2 minutes or something, take it off, and it was really clear that something had activated. And apparently my son's had this used successfully with earaches, and it's worked instantaneously. And so, yeah, anyway, now, last night I came home going, well, okay, it's really clear that it's now not a cancer, but a spot or a boil. And there was almost a feeling of disappointment. Which just seems crazy because there was this thrilling level of excitement, of vitality that came from being thrust into this adventure that, like maybe this is it. Like this is it. That was just so exciting that there was almost an anticlimax. Oh, just a spot. And thinking about the letters that I'm writing to different authorities and how I might have to actually wait for their responses and see what they say, and there might be just that dimming of the urgency of life. Now I live life pretty urgently, you know, like I'm working really hard, not just like in terms of the work that I do in the world, but also like for money, but also the projects that I'm doing and the things that I'm initiating. Like I really work pretty hard. You know, I don't live each day as if it's like, oh, I could do that tomorrow. And yet I felt that kind of excitement, that vitality rise even higher in the face of potential death. And you know, that is one of the ways of many wisdom paths, is the, you know, it doesn't matter whether you're looking at Buddhism or Hinduism or Taoism, you know, it's like that the mental exercise of accepting one's death and really considering it and really bringing it close into your meditations gets you to kind of go, well, what am I living for? It can be hugely regenerative. It's so rejuvenating to go, well, if this is my last day, what am I going to do with it? And you know, there are so many things that we take seriously in this life that we really shouldn't, like politicians. Look at what they are doing in that circus called government to absolutely devastate the society that we live in. You know, we are being absolutely led by donkeys at this point. There are so few people in the world of politics that I would want as a friend, let alone leading a country. Like the corruption that we see is just endemic everywhere. It's so full on, you know, and we're still going along with it. We're going along with it as if we've got another 10, 20, 30 years of our lives to look forward to. Imagine if we all knew that there was only a month to go. Are we gonna keep paying taxes to sustain this insanity? You know, it's very interesting that one of the things that's going on this planet at the moment is that we're going through a magnetic pole shift. This is not a question of debate. This is absolutely scientifically accurate that the poles are shifting and it's accelerating, and it looks, according to the geological record and the cycles of time that we go through, that we are accelerating towards a magnetic pole shift, which can have catastrophic results. You know, all of those, you know, I'm not a man for disaster movies, and, you know, I've obviously seen clips of many of the disaster movies that came out in the 90s and in the 2000s, where, you know, it was like special effects were getting to the point where people could make really convincing tidal waves engulfing whole cities. And I remember seeing clips of, you know, like these enormous waves that just dwarf a city skyline, and thinking that it was just completely ridiculous and a thing of fantasy. And you know, now the historical record, you know, shows that, you know, the Great Flood really happened, and that, you know, many great floods have happened, and huge tsunamis that have swept across whole continents. And we may be facing that as a society. We may well be on the cusp of a cleansing of this earth and a rebirth of civilization, and certainly the death of life as we know it. And if you're aware of all the billionaires that are building themselves ridiculous bunkers buried into the ground and into mountains and stuff, it certainly seems that something might be afoot. And yet we're still going along with it, still going along with all of these ridiculous demands on our time and our attention and on our money. Like, if we're paying taxes at this point, if we're voluntarily handing over money to the government, you know, we're participating in genocide. We're supporting the military industrial complex. We're supporting these donkeys in parliament that are just raping our country, and raping our children mentally. So and this is where it touches me profoundly and very, very personally. Because last night, I went to go and see my youngest children, and there was a moment when we were wrestling that they, I was like, oh, ouch, 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 watch my ear, like you're hurting my cancer, and their mum reacted, like in this, like, oh God, talk about over dramatic kind of, like, she was making fun of it, and it, led to all these funny conversations, and I was smiling at the time. I was making fun of it, but the children very soon were like, oh, you and your cancer, like, oh, get my cancer, and really making fun out of it. And while this was going on, and I was coming to realize that actually, no, this is probably a spot or a boil, as I was experiencing that relief, one of my other daughters was in hospital. And her life has been pretty much devastated since the lockdowns of 2020. Those lockdowns happened when she was 11 or 12 or 13, I don't know, around about that time. And she then spent, the best part of 6 months sitting in a room on her own. She didn't live with me at that time. I got her out as much as I possibly could, but a huge amount of that time was spent in her room with a gadget, with an iPhone. And life has never been the same for anyone since that time. That was the first major authoritarian application of a control system out of control. And I'm afraid if you still think that was like the right thing to do from a government, then I am sorry for you. I'm sincerely sorry for you. You are way, way down the river. I understand that people are extremely afraid of health, of the idea of bacteria and dirt and all these things that are just absolute nonsense, but I think a lot of people now are realizing how awful that was for old people, for young people, for children. I've worked in education, and the developmental effects on young people have, especially on young children. My youngest was born in January of 2020. And so he was born just before all that insanity kicked off. And so I know people of that peer group, and the number of children with developmental effects it's just off the charts. It's just off the charts. I've worked and seen what children were like before and after, and we're into a different category of being now. I feel very grateful that I was able to somehow dance through that process with those young children that I have. And I mistakenly thought that one of my older ones had just managed to get through by the skin of her teeth, and tonight she's in hospital. Really not well in herself. Very scared and confused. And it's not a physical condition in the typical sense. She's in a mental state, and that is really concerning for me, especially because or I mean from my perspective, especially because the treatment that I know she needs is not what she's going to get offered in hospital. They're going to diagnose her, analyze her, probably offer her medication, to which she will be, which the psychological medications that are being offered to people these days are so profoundly damaging. I don't know if you would have kept abreast of how the not serial killers, what do they call it? The people that are going into schools on these massive killing sprees. Every one of them has a history of SSRIs, who have in their, I don't know. It's just, I don't trust the medical industry with my health, let alone the health of one of my children. And one of the other things is that beside fasting, good nutrition resolves so many issues. Like there's this woman that I'm working with who is, she has 2 children that were both suffering autism and ADHD and all sorts of other mental conditions, and she's helped loads of people whose families have been suffering with these conditions, and now they're all fine through properly eating and healing the gut, because basically most conditions arise in the gut. And when people eat processed foods, there's only so long that the body can handle it. There was other things at play as well that catalyzed this thing for my daughter, and I'm not concerned for her in the long run, because I know that with the process of healing she'll be fine. She needs the right food, she needs to get her circadian rhythms in order, she needs enough sunlight, she needs enough love. She'll be okay. But it's scary, and it was extremely poignant that, at the moment that I was realizing, this is okay, I'm going to be all right, I haven't got cancer, was the moment that then I realized that actually this person who I love deeply is really profoundly affected by what's going on, and that she's going to need my love more than anything right now. So, as I said, when I was having this sort of magical moment in my bathroom with this kind of wondering as to whether or not I had a terminal illness, it actually ended up becoming this moment of joyful rebirth. There's no other word for it. I could feel an excitement in my whole body at the fact that I was confronting my death. And I'm almost a bit sad that that's dissipated now. So at the time I was thinking, should I record something? Should I put this on the internet? And there wasn't, I was just, it wasn't the right time. And being awake in the middle of the night, and really awake and thinking, what do I need to do with this time? It was like, it's time to record something. So this was my encounter with a profound health scare and how it affected me. And I suspect that there's a few people who will be interested and surprised by my take on things. And I'm especially thinking that I'm going to send this to those people who I may have worried as I was thinking aloud about what was going on, because I'm someone who often thinks aloud. And someone said, "How are you doing?" And I was like, well, okay, but I've got this lump in my ear and I think it might be a cancer. And then dealing with their response. So this is my response to their responses, and I will share this with friends and family, and I may well just put it openly online, because I suspect that some people might find it inspiring. I hope so, because what I've certainly realised from it is that I'm in pretty good shape, not just with myself, but with my death. and I'm not scared. I'm not scared. I know that consciousness goes on. I know that this time in this body will come to an end. It's so funny, this like wide scale obsession with longevity, and with all these, there are these crazy fanatics at the moment who think they're going to live forever, and they spend their days, that's the funny thing, that they think that taking like bottles and bottles of tablets every day is going to ensure that they live forever. It's just insanity what's going on in this world at the moment. I accept the fact that I'm going to die, and in fact it's the death that makes life that much more beautiful, and makes it, we're so lucky to be aware for a moment, to witness this, to be able to feel a wall, to be able to breathe air and feel something moving through our nose. Like, to have a corporal existence is this incredible thing, and it's just completely overlooked by so many people. And I don't blame people for that, because we've been trained not to see it. We've been indoctrinated to buy into a slave system that taxes our time and strips the world of its beauty. We've been indoctrinated by parents and schools that didn't know they had also in turn been indoctrinated. So I don't blame anybody for any of this. I understand how this cult of normality has formed, and how we have come to exist in the way that we have, but we don't have to live that way. And I'm really grateful for this health scare this week, and how it's forced me to confront some things even more profoundly. So anyway, goodness, that's an hour. Wow. So it's only going to be those people that are really interested that are ever going to watch that. But yeah, I'm glad to know that I'm alive, and that all I've got in my ear is a spot, even if somehow the drama of it being worse suited me. I hope you're well. I trust you're well.